We've spent weeks poring over the Stormlight RPG books from the record-breaking Cosmere Kickstarter, and now, we're ready to bring you our brutally honest review.
It's finally happening!
Before we dive into the review of the biggest RPG to ever hit Kickstarter, why not take a second to hit those like and subscribe buttons to help us keep these videos coming? It's totally free and it really helps the channel. And then, let's talk some Stormlight. Now, we've had access to the final versions of the Stormlight Handbook, along with the World Guide and some other Stormlight releases from the Cosmere RPG, for about 2 weeks now. And we've been reading through it, creating characters, running a few combats in the intro adventures to test out all those rules. And while we'll break down some of this review to talk about each of the books released digitally today for the Kickstarter backers, overall we were left with one very clear impression. This may be the best D20 based TTRPG we have played, maybe ever. I know that sounds like hyperbole, but let's start with the Stormlight Handbook to explain why we were left stunned by how good this TTRPG truly is. First off, it's instantly familiar to D&D players, more so than Daggerheart, as its core mechanic is a D20 based system that nearly every RPG fan has grown up playing. You also still have 6 core stats, although their 0 to 5 score is closer to Pathfinder 2nd Edition's version of stats in D&D's, but it's incredibly easy to follow and will also feel remarkably familiar. And that continues into character creation, which also features a familiar setup of picking your ancestry, picking your culture, which basically replaces backgrounds many D&D fans will be familiar with, choosing your stats, your starting path, aka their version of classes, etc. It will all feel very familiar. And while we won't dive super deeply into the system here, as the mechanics remain largely the same as they were in the playtest versions, with a few minor tweaks to like numbers and abilities here and there, it's just insanely easy to onboard a D&D player into the Stormlight RPG. The really groundbreaking stuff they're doing is the way your character advances in their path, which almost feels like building out your talent tree in a game like World of Warcraft, and provides a stunning level of customization while still being familiar and easy to follow. As you level, you can start focusing in on one of the specializations of your path, or you can even make your character a Radiant, one of the powerful Stormlight users in the setting who bond with an elemental or primordial spirit known as a Spren. And the mechanics for doing so are clearly outlined in the book and do come with some very interesting trade-offs for this increase in power to keep it in line with those players who want to stick with their heroic paths instead of the Radiant ones. So everything remains balanced while still feeling true to the source material. Combat is a unique twist on the Pathfinder-style action system, where you can choose to take a fast turn, in which players will always go before enemies, which lets you act first and only take 2 actions. Or you may take a slow turn, and again, you will go before slow enemies but after fast enemies, and you will get an additional 3rd action if you choose to do so. This choice adds a shocking level of decision making and risk reward to combat, which otherwise feels very much like your classic Pathfinder or D&D based combat, with a reaction granted to players every turn, some free actions at their disposal, the ability to move. So you've all kind of seen the basics before, it's just a twist on them that makes it so much more interesting. Also, you crit by spending Opportunity, which is a resource granted by rolling the plot die, which is something that will happen quite often in the game, often at the GM's discretion, but as we were talking with Johnny O'Neill at Brotherwise, he was using it like 25% of the time. So instead of just rolling a 20 to crit, you may, on a hit, choose to spend 1 Opportunity, and you will then maximize your damage with a crit. So crits and big damage happen more frequently than in standard D&D, and you get to choose your timing of when. You can also spend Focus, which is a resource everyone has based off their willpower stat, to turn a miss into a minor hit called a graze, where you just roll your weapon damage dice, but you don't add any ability modifiers to the damage. You also have 3 different kinds of defenses: physical, cognitive, and spiritual, but those all are kind of easily laid out and make sense, and attacks will always tell you what they're targeting. And social encounters, called conversations in the book, have a similar structure to combat, where you'll need to take actions and make smart choices when dealing with the NPCs in this world, where politics can be deadlier than combat. And that makes socially based classes and abilities incredibly important, and makes social encounters every bit as challenging and tactical as the combats are, which is great to see in a game. Basically, this will all feel like interesting, compelling tweaks to a very familiar action and mechanic system that every D&D player will know. And it just kind of feels like maybe what 2024 D&D should have been. Combine that with some truly stunning artwork, a huge selection of weapons and equipment, including shard weapons and armor, the Stormlight-infused gear used by non-Radiants to kind of achieve that same level of inhuman power, and path choices that honor the source material while also giving players some incredibly compelling choices no matter which path their character winds up taking. Now, a lot of what is in the handbook is deeply tied to the source material, so players not familiar with the works of Brandon Sanderson and his Stormlight Archive books could feel a little bit lost if not for the amazing World Guide and the Welcome to Roshar Guide. If you want to do a massive lore-filled deep dive of all things Roshar, the world of the Stormlight Archive, the World Guide is a treasure trove of well-written lore and amazing art that explains everything you'll ever need to know about the setting, the cultures, the history of the world, all of that. And if you don't really have time to pore over the entire World Guide before playing, which is a fair point, the handy Welcome to Roshar Guide is packed full of everything you need to know to get started, complete with easy to follow and beautifully illustrated visual guides on everything from the enemies you could face in the wild to different types of friends you may come across to how heroic paths work, all in just 27 pages that you can read in no time at all and be right on track. As for the adventures included in this release, Stonewalkers has undergone some revisions since we last saw it, but remains an incredible introduction to the setting to take your characters through those first several levels of their path, which isn't shocking when you consider how much input Brandon Sanderson himself had on this initial adventure, which is canon to the Stormlight source, which is kind of crazy to think about. And while we won't say much to avoid spoiling it, because there are a lot of these important canon events inside the adventure, it's an absolute delight for both Stormlight fans and new players experiencing the setting for the first time, with its incredible enemies and political structures, and it just does a great job of guiding you through a sort of greatest hits of all the possible types of encounters you could face in the Stormlight RPG. So all that said, let's talk about the review score. All things considered, given how the Brotherwise Games team has managed to keep everything not only in line with the source material, but literally canon to the source material itself under the watchful eye of Brandon Sanderson, and still made such a compelling and interesting evolution of the very familiar D20 and D&T based concepts that make this game so approachable, and how the one thing that could turn off some players, a lack of knowledge about the Stormlight setting, is countered by the incredible Welcome to Roshar Guide and a World Guide that is just super well written and full of deeply descriptive lore and amazing fantasy art. I have to give Stormlight a 5 out of 5, as it is truly one of the best D20 systems I've ever played. And given how easy it is to onboard D&D players into this familiar but frankly better system, and what a huge player base it already has from the record-breaking Kickstarter and its robust character creation and digital tools platform from Demiplane Nexus, D&D shouldn't just be worried, they should be terrified. Because Stormlight and the Cosmere RPG are coming straight for their market share, and it's never been easier for a D&D player to jump ship into a new system. So what do you think? Are you excited to try out all the new materials from the Stormlight RPG? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons.